right, everyone. So it's almost 4:05, so we're going to start the webinar now. Welcome to the first installment of RideWise and the Green Leadership Hub Sustainable Jersey webinar series, Electric Vehicles in Somerset County. I'm Sarah Catherine, Community Outreach Coordinator at RideWise, and I'm excited to welcome you all here today. New Jersey has passed legislation just this year to encourage and support electric vehicle ownership and infrastructure, which is an exciting step forward in the world of sustainable transportation. Today's webinar focuses on electric vehicle initiatives in Somerset County and resources for municipalities within the county who would like to make their own towns more electric vehicle friendly. So before we start, I'll just go over a few quick housekeeping items. Just waiting for the slide to change. Let's see, there we go. So as an attendee, you are muted, but if you have questions during our panelist presentations, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will be having our Q&A near the end of the webinar where we will try to get to everyone's questions as best we can. During our Q&A, you can also raise your hand to ask a question. And also at the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat box and your audio settings. We've got some great speakers today, and I'm very excited to introduce them and for their presentations today. You may have noticed when you were registering that one of the speakers for today was Leanne McGowan, RideWise's Business Development Manager. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it. She had to get foot surgery today, but I will be presenting her material for her. I'm pleased to welcome our other panelists, Eve Gable-Frank of ChargEVC and Gable Associates, Paul McCall, Director of Public Works for Somerset County, and Androsh Holzman, Senior Planner for Somerset County. Thank you each for joining us today. So to start, I'll just go a little bit into who we are at RideWise and our electric vehicle programming. At RideWise, we are an independent nonprofit organization that is dedicated to promoting and advocating for transportation choices that are efficient, safe, and sustainable. RideWise engages with large and small employers, local government, state agencies, and school districts to achieve this. And part of how we achieve this is by engaging with municipalities in Somerset County on projects and initiatives that promote safe and sustainable transportation, such as assistance with Sustainable Jersey actions. So what Sustainable Jersey actions can RideWise help with? We can help municipalities with many of the actions that fall under land use and transportation, health and wellness, and energy transportation initiatives. For this webinar, we're focusing on the energy transportation initiatives, which cover electric vehicles. So myself and our panelists are going to be discussing the actions that fall under energy transportation initiatives and are all about making your community electric vehicle friendly. I'll be talking about RideWise specific programming that can help your municipality complete the Make Your Town Electric Vehicle Friendly action. And our other panelists will be discussing steps you can take to complete this action, as well as the public electric vehicle charging infrastructure and purchase alternative fuel vehicles actions. So there are multiple requirements for the Make Your Town Electric Vehicle Friendly action, which I have listed here on the slide. For municipalities to earn points for these actions, they must complete the 3 bullet points under requirements and then at least one of the activities under the next point, one of the following. So 2 of those extra activities are something that RideWise can specifically help with: hosting an awareness event and securing commitments from 3 local partners to install workplace charging stations. So through our New Jersey Smart Workplaces program, my colleague Leanne McGowan has worked with our corporate partners on EV awareness events, such as our all-electric vehicles, the future of personal transport lunch and learn. These lunch and learns have often been accompanied, the unveiling of newly installed EV chargers at these work sites, and they also include EV test drives. So even though Leanne's given this presentation at corporate sites, she can also partner with municipalities, as municipalities can participate in our New Jersey Smart Workplaces program. But even if you're not in our New Jersey Smart Workplaces program, you can still partner with us, and Leanne will work with you to do a awareness event similar to this Lunch and Learn. In the past, we've held this Lunch and Learn with a variety of partners, including Ingredient in Bridgewater and the Pingree School in Basking Ridge. So this awareness event provides an energizing overview of EVs and addresses vehicle charging and range, maintenance, safety, vehicle and electricity costs, and EV purchase incentives and rebates. In the past, before COVID, we would also offer EV test drives at these events. We have a contact, a New Jersey contact for Tesla, who would bring a few vehicles to the events for people to test drive, which has always been a really fun and popular part of these events. Now during COVID, I'm sure things are different at your municipalities. It's different for us too. We've been working from home. But if your municipality was interested in such an event, we would work with you to plan one. We would look at each event on a case-by-case basis to see if test drives would be safe, appropriate, or feasible. And even if we found that, you know, having a test drive event wasn't, you know, appropriate or wouldn't reach your goals during this time, we can still present our Lunch and Learn presentation virtually. If you're interested in a similar event, but not in this exact format, we're open to organizing any kind of electric vehicle program you'd like. So whether it's a lunch and learn, an evening webinar, a weekend community event open to the public, you can reach out to us with your idea and what type of program you'd like to do, and we will work with you on creating an EV program relevant to your goals. So I put Leanne's contact information up on the screen if you are interested in this program or want to discuss hosting your own event or your own kind of awareness program in your municipality. So you can always email Leanne and she'll be happy to work with you on any EV educational program you'd be interested in. We also have additional electric vehicle resources on our website, ridewise.org. If you go to our site, you'll see at the top multiple tabs. And if you hover over electric vehicles, you'll see 3 different web pages. Public Electric Vehicle Chargers Map, which is a link to NJDEP's Public EV Charging Locator Map. This map can help you locate chargers throughout the state, so you'll never have to worry about your EV running out of power. It's a really great tool for if you're planning a trip and you want to see what chargers are along your route, to make sure that you don't run out of power and you have a place to stop and charge. It's a great tool for that. We also have resources for electric vehicle owners and resources for employers. And we update these resource pages as frequently as we can as new information comes up. So these are great places to visit if you're looking for resources related to funding, rebates, and so forth. And we're also a great place for educational events such as this webinar, and to help connect you to other organizations and partners that can help you reach your EV goals, such as our great speakers who are experts on the subject. So with that, I think is a perfect segue into our next presentation from Eve from ChargEVC. So Eve, how about we move into your presentation now? And for everybody else, we'll be answering your questions at the end during our Q&A portion. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box during our presentations. Go ahead, Eve.
All right, so I turned my video on. I unmuted myself. Now I'll get my PowerPoint up. All right, so hi everyone. Just to quickly reintroduce myself and give some background, my name is Eve Gable-Frank. I spend a lot of time working on the ChargEVC coalition. So ChargEVC, to give you some context, is a New Jersey state-based coalition. We have around 40 members. So we have all of the investor-owned utilities, we have vehicle and charging station manufacturers, we have environmental organizations, labor organizations, all coming together, really different groups with different interests, but all coming together with the goal to advance transportation electrification in the state. So we work really hard on coming up with programs and policies for the state, and we were also very involved in getting the EV law passed this past year. I also just wanted to add a little plug. We also have associate members. I saw Stan, Central Jersey Electric Auto Association is an associate member of ours, and that is not a voting member, but we do have that association and other municipalities as associate members, and we keep our associate members updated, and when they have questions about electric vehicles in their towns, you know, we like to keep in contact and answer questions, or if we can't answer questions, sort of put them in contact with the right people. So if anyone in your town in Somerset County is interested in becoming an associate member, feel free to shoot me an email. So since ChargEVC is very involved in policy development, I'm sort of going to give a background on the current EV landscape in the state. I'm going to give a broad overview of the new law and then just sort of list off some other things that are going on in the state, some opportunities that are available broadly and some that are available to you in Somerset County. So the law, it was passed with bipartisan support this past January. It was signed into law by Governor Murphy. It did some very groundbreaking things. It set goals to put more EVs on the road, to put in some publicly accessible charging infrastructure, to electrify fleets, and to put in place an EV rebate program. So I'll go through these 4 bullets in a little more detail. And if you have any questions at the end, you can ask. So the first goal was putting more electric vehicles on the road. As I'm sure many or all of you know, transportation is the highest emitter in New Jersey. It accounts for, I think, a little over 40% of emissions in the state. So one really effective way in lowering emissions is to convert internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles. So through some analysis, we were able to come up with this goal that would really bring some significant emissions changes. So you can see here, the law has a goal of 330,000 plug-in electric vehicles by 2025, and it incrementally increases until 85% of all vehicles sold should be plug-in by 2040. So that's a pretty big goal for 5 years, you know, really 4 years from now. Right now, or actually as of December, right before the law was passed, there were 30,000 registered EVs in New Jersey. So at the end of this year, we'll sort of get another accounting of how we've gone towards reaching that goal, but it is a very big jump. Next is a goal to increase publicly accessible charging infrastructure. So the goals that were set in the law were 1,000 level 2 chargers by 2025 and 400 DC fast chargers in at least 200 locations by 2025. And the law specified that those fast chargers have to be at least 150 kilowatts. So to give you a snapshot of what it looks like right now, I pulled these numbers out a few weeks ago, so I don't think they've changed much. There are 328 compliant level 2 charging station locations, and the goal is 1,000. Next, there are 65 DC fast charging station locations that don't comply with the goal. So they're public, they're available for you to use, but they're under 150 kilowatts and they don't help us reach our goal of DC fast charging stations. And then there are only 6 DC fast charging locations right now, where in 5 years we're trying to reach 200. So that's a really big jump that we have to make. And for both of these goals, I'll sort of go through what exactly the state is doing and different groups are doing to try to push us to reach those goals, because the market is not just naturally getting us there. Next is electrifying fleets. So the law set a goal to electrify state-owned fleets. 25% of state-owned fleets should be plug-in EVs by 2025. And then New Jersey has one of the largest transit agencies in the state, and we did not have any clean transportation goals. So 10% of new bus purchases by NJ Transit should be zero emission by 2024. And you can see that they also incrementally increase until 100% of those purchases are zero emission electric vehicles. So finally, sort of the golden egg of this law is the EV rebate program. So it allocated $30 million a year over the next 10 years for a cash on the hood rebate, meaning once this rebate is in full effect, which at the moment it isn't, you can walk into a dealership, get up to $5,000 off of your car, just right there. Currently, since the program isn't fully in place, you go buy your car and you can get the rebate afterwards, but it is up and running. Another thing to point out about it is it's only available for EVs with an MSRP below $55,000, so this is not for luxury vehicles. And we actually got word from the Board of Public Utilities, who's running this program, that it has been really successful. If you think about what's happened since January when this law was passed and this rebate was put into place, we haven't had a great economic environment, and that's an understatement. But the BPU received 1,800 applications for this rebate program. Most of them were for the full $5,000, meaning it was for a longer range electric vehicle. And that was pretty surprising considering the rebate program isn't fully up and running and all that's going on in the world. So that's very hopeful. That this is a tool that we can use to help us reach our vehicle electrification goal. Like I said, I know this is a kind of long list, but I just want to go through each of these bullets just so that you all sort of know what else is going on in this state to help us reach these goals. So first is the DEP It Pays to Plug In program. So the DEP offers funding for level 2 and for fast charging stations to, it's open to anyone, but the charging stations have to be publicly accessible. They just completed their last round of funding for DC fast charging stations a month or two ago, and they got a lot of applications. So this is rolling. And funds for this will become available again for municipalities to take advantage of. Also, we have worked with Sustainable Jersey, with DEP, with DCA, the Department of Consumer Affairs, to draft some model ordinances for municipalities to adopt. These are still in the drafting stages, but New Jersey is notorious for being very difficult to permit for charging stations. So, so putting in place model ordinances, making public model ordinances that towns can adopt will hopefully ease that difficulty. Next, as you know, we just went over, Sustainable Jersey has multiple actions that encourage municipalities to invest in and prioritize electrification of transportation. So that is really important in getting municipalities to act. The BPU actually recently just reopened their municipal incentive program. So they offer $4,000 towards the purchase of an electric vehicle and $1,500 towards the purchase of a level 2 charger. So that was really exciting to hear that they reopened that. There's also a dealer certification program. So I've actually spent a lot of time talking to Leanne about this. I know that she has relationships with dealers in Somerset County, and it's really important that dealers who are that point of contact for people who are buying EVs are educated on how electric vehicles work and how how individuals' travel habits will change when they own an electric vehicle. So we work with the Department of Environmental Protection and Plug-in America and NJ Car, who represents all of the dealerships. And we've put in place a dealer certification program for them. So that's something that we're always encouraging groups to talk about, spread the word on, try to get their dealers certified, because it's really important in advancing EV adoption. And feel free to reach out to me if you want some more information on that. Holding ride-in drives. We hold ride-in drives. I'm pretty sure that RideWise has held ride-in drives. The state has held ride-in drives. Those are really important in increasing consumer awareness and showing people how normal it feels to ride an EV, but also how fun it is to drive an EV. And I'm going to skip down to the last one because this is a long list. Atlantic City Electric and PSE&G both have utility filings in at the Board of Public Utilities. And if these get approved, that will be very instrumental in sort of continuing this build out of EV infrastructure. The utilities, they have a big stake in this. So we're sort of watching that and hoping that, the state sort of sees the importance of investing in that, and that we get some funding through that. So that was a pretty long list. I'm going to hand it off so that you can hear some more specifics about what's going on in Somerset County, and feel free to ask me any questions about this once the presentations are done.
Great, thank you so much, Eve. That was a really great presentation. Next, we're going to go into Paul and Andras will be presenting together, talking more about Somerset County's electric vehicle initiative and some chargers and electrification of their fleet. And as a reminder, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box and we will get to them at our Q&A session at the end. So go ahead, Paul and Andras, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to start here. So starting in 2018, the freeholders of the county wanted to get together to do an electric vehicle readiness plan to make the county more electric vehicle ready. So we created this short guide of the actions that the county would like to take and goals that the county has for making the county electric vehicle ready. So we've begun to purchase vehicles for our motor pool. We are looking to provide more assistance to municipalities. We are, as you've heard from Eve, looking at those model ordinances when they come through to share those with the municipalities. And we have partnered with a few of our towns in providing technical assistance for installing charging stations. So we put in for a grant just recently with the NJTPA, New Jersey Planning Authority, to expand this guide into a real plan for making the county more EV ready, providing more services to municipality and the public, and educating the public more on EVs. And we hope to start that next year, 2021, and probably finish that in 2022, so we can provide more services. So I can pass it to Paul now to talk more about how we installed chargers in the county and how we procured vehicles for our fleet.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just gonna, once Andras shuts his screen down, I'll share the screen over a short presentation that we have with what Somerset County is doing. Okay, so Somerset County and our electric vehicles. So right now, our current vehicle that we own, and we have 6 of them, is a Chevy Bolt. So the Chevy Bolts were purchased basically because of range and the uses that we were going to have for them. It is a small, compact car, but it did serve the purposes for what we needed. So what we use the Chevy Bolt for right now is we use for mail delivery, which is the main purpose of these electric vehicles. We also have one in youth services, weights and measures, our Office of Emergency Management, and our planning division. Now, we have a couple types of charging stations that we have installed at the county. So we have our fleet charging station, as you can see here. Basically looks like what's referred to as a dummy head. Only county vehicles are allowed to charge at these stations. Obviously, as you can look at this, there's nowhere to put your charge. And we use ChargePoint, by the way. We buy them off a contract, which I'll go over a few slides away. But we did install these types of stations where it's needed for the county employees. So these are level 2 stations, and we also have just the regular plug-in where it can plug into an outlet, but obviously that takes a lot longer to charge. This use, now one of the hurdles that you have to overcome with having the 6 vehicles, and we only have 2 of these fleet charging stations, is working it out amongst the people to get all the vehicles charged, and someone doesn't just park their vehicle there and continue to charge it. So we make sure that the divisions that have access to these electric vehicles communicate with each other and know who else has the vehicles, so we're not inconveniencing anybody else and not allowing them to charge their vehicle. Now, this is a public charging station. This is one of 4 that we have actually installed. This is right outside our county complex. This is actually our county jail. Now, for this charging station, when we put it in, we had to, this is a borough street that it's on, the borough of Somerville. So we had to get permission from the borough of Somerville to put it there. One of the reasons that we installed it here is over here, as you can see, the electric panel. It was close to where the electric goes into the jail, but we did have to get a meter put in here for this charging station. Now, we don't promote that anyone else does that. If you can tie directly into the building, you won't have to pay the extra fee for the meter. However, I don't know if anybody else is on here from a county, but if you talk to the sheriff or the warden, they do not want you drilling any holes into a jail and creating any openings. So we decided to install it outside. Again, with the level 2s, we also had to be careful of how far the run was, because the size of the wire that would need it for the amperage of the charger. So this is one public charging station that we have in Somerville. One of the downsides to this one is Somerville has a parking ordinance. So if someone comes to charge here, not only do they have to pay to charge, but they also have to pay to park. We have 3 other public charging stations that we've installed. We've installed one at the Bridgewater Library, which is Somerset County's most heavily used library. There you do not have to pay to park, but you do have to pay to charge. And we installed another one at the Bridgewater Municipal Building. And again, you don't need to pay to park there, but you have to pay to charge. Bridgewater actually received the grants and purchased the charging station heads. The county, we were looking to, as Andras mentioned, move forward in this EV readiness plan and start to put these up. So the county actually installed those for the township. And we do have a couple other townships that are interested. Obviously, when COVID hit, it kind of shut down doing some of these things. Even though we are all at work, we still are not doing some of these outside of the ordinary services that we provide. We are looking to install them at every county library at some point and every golf course the county has. The last one, which I just mentioned, golf courses, we have one installed at Neshannock Valley Golf Course in Branchburg. That golf course is heavily utilized, and they do have quite a few people who drive their electric vehicles there. Now for our vehicle charging, and obviously you can see from this picture, it's as easy as pull the vehicle up, open up the door, and then plug the charger in and charge the vehicle. Now for the public charging, there's a little more that goes into it. You have to, like I said, we use ChargePoint. You have to register with ChargePoint. You put your credit card on their system. They send you a fob, and then you're able to use that fob. But even out of these charging stations, we're able to get information off them, these fleet stations, and obviously the public charging stations, we're able to get information off them if we need it or we want to. We'll all go into training. So how does a government agency procure these types of vehicles? We were lucky enough that the Chevy Bolts are on the ESCNJ, which is the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey. It's a co-op bid that goes out through that organization that we are allowed to purchase off. There's very few places that we really can't go out and buy anywhere, but there's only certain co-ops that have these things that we can buy off. We're Somerset County. I'm not saying that all municipalities, but Somerset County government is not allowed to buy off the federal co-ops. That is just through our purchasing division. It's not that it's illegal. So what we do is once we figure out which vehicle we want, we do a resolution. So we go in front of the freeholders with a resolution stating how much the vehicle is, what we want to purchase, or how many, and they have to approve it. So that takes a month to approve. It goes through 2 meetings. It goes to an agenda session, and then 2 weeks later, it'll go through an obvious regular meeting. But the whole process itself is about a month long. Then from that, we create a purchase order. The purchase order is sent to the dealership. Now, with the electric vehicles, like Sarah had mentioned, we contact the dealership and talk to them. They're not used to getting purchase orders for electric vehicles. So we go over it specifically with the dealership, and obviously through the contract of ESCNJ, we do have the contact name and information for the person who's handling specifically the electric vehicles. So we do speak with them and talk to them to make sure that everything goes the way we want and that they know it's an electric vehicle. Now, some of the data that we've recently gotten from utilizing electric vehicles is there is a training required. So anytime someone is going to drive or use an electric vehicle that hasn't used it before, we require them to be trained. It doesn't have to be a certification training, but we do want to have someone who's driven it and experienced train those people on how to use it. One of the reasons is, and if you haven't driven an electric vehicle, and I won't call it a fuel pedal, but you put down the accelerator, it goes and it moves. So people have to understand how to drive it and how to operate it. It does take a little getting used to not hearing an engine. We have had hybrids in the past, and we still do have some Prius hybrids, and people get nervous when they first get in it still when they're driving and then they take their foot off the pedal and the engine goes out. So it's just some of those things, and then learning the interior of the vehicle, how it handles, and those types of things. Now, the vehicles that we have, the 6 of them that we have range from 7,000 miles to 26,000 miles. So we first purchased them in 2019, and we do have some 2020s. Now, the one maybe not surprising thing, but one of the benefits that we found is there is very little maintenance that we found is required on these electric vehicles. So there's only a few things that we had to do. We had to add air to a tire. We did have to replace 2 front tires because one of our employees actually ran into a curb and blew out one of the tires. And you probably asked, well, why'd you replace them both? With government, we have to buy tires off a contract. So we didn't want to put 2 different brand names on the front tires of the vehicle. So we ended up replacing both front tires. But that was an employee issue why we had to replace the tires. We did have one vehicle that had an issue with the charging port that we took to the dealer and was covered under warranty. So other than that, there's been no fuel costs and 0 maintenance costs. So if you want to call adding air to a tire maintenance costs, okay. But there has been very little that we've had to do with these. And so in that respect, it's been beneficial. Now, there is a downside that we have to these specific Chevy Bolts, and that's in the winter. So when it snows out, we don't necessarily utilize those vehicles. We do not drive the mail room vehicle around to deliver the mail, and we try not to use the other ones. And it's not that you can't use them in the snow, but the ones that we have are only 2-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive. So we'd rather, it's our choice, by the way. It's not that they can't handle it. We'd rather the employees not drive them in the snow so we don't have any accidents. Where does the county plan to go in the future? Well, we don't plan to stop with Chevy Bolts. We are waiting for some more electric vehicles to be put on the market in, say, the SUV range or pickup trucks. What is on the market, though, and is also on another contract, which is on the ESCNJ, is heavy-duty trucks. So what we're going to look at next year, and obviously there's a large expense to that, but we are going to look at, we're putting in for a bucket truck for capital, like a tree trimming bucket truck. So we want to make sure with the company that the electric cab and chassis can, handle that type of operation, because that's something that sits around for a long time on the road while only the bucket is operating. And for our recycling division, we have automated side loaders that have the arm on the side to pick up the recycling bins and dump them in a truck. So we'd like to convert those to electric. Now, just for your own information, the automated side loaders that we buy now are $375,000 each. The cab and chassis for an electric, basically just the body, not the body, just the cab and chassis without the body, is $450,000. So just for the cab and chassis, it's $450,000 for the electric. So we do have to take that in consideration with our capital expenditures. We also have grants into New Jersey through the Volkswagen monies to get electrified buses. We'd like to electrify that fleet. We keep losing out to New Jersey Transit, but at some point, hopefully, we can get an electric bus. And again, there are significant costs to that, where the buses that we buy are about $300,000, and these electric buses are $700,000 to $900,000. But we are looking to move forward. I know our freeholders are very interested, and as of January 1st, commissioners, to move forward with electrifying the county fleet. So we will continue to do that from this point forward, and also start to put more charging stations out there for people to utilize. One of the things, and we actually have employees that come to us or myself and talk about electric vehicles. Should I purchase an electric vehicle? And I will say the number one reason why they don't is range anxiety. We find that that's the number one reason why employees are not purchasing electric vehicles. I was just talking to an employee the other day. He was deciding between electric and a hybrid. He ended up going with the hybrid, but the electric vehicles I think are beneficial and really are the wave of the future. It's just a matter of getting people to accept them. All right, so that's all for my presentation here. And if I know that Sarah said if you have questions, they're going to type them in. So let me close this, stop sharing my screen here. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Paul and Andras. That was a really great presentation. I think it's great the point you brought up at the end about range anxiety. I know that that is kind of like the #1 hesitation people have towards electric vehicles. And it's great, kind of like ties into Eve's presentation and what I brought up about the webpage we have with the DEP map is that hopefully range anxiety will be something that people won't necessarily be afraid of in the near future because of the state's initiatives to kind of, build more of that EV infrastructure. Plus, I think EVs are also, they're getting larger and larger ranges than they used to too, which is pretty great. So yeah, we'll start our Q&A now. Got a couple questions coming in. Deborah Keenan from Montgomery says, we just broke ground on a new municipal complex, which will take 18 months to complete. How should we look into the feasibility of it being a DC fast charging station? I guess she means installing a DC fast charging station at the complex.
So I don't know who's supposed, I can answer. That's actually through our improvement authority that Montgomery building is being built. But they need to make sure from the beginning that where the panel is and where they want to put the charging station is in close proximity. So that should be part of the design. If they were looking, now it's not that you can't do it afterwards. You can. But just remember, when you put these fast chargers in, you're talking about very high voltage. Normally, they could be 3-phase, depending on what type they are. And you need to make sure that you have the conduit there and the ability to do that. So it really should have been in a design phase, but obviously it's something that can be done afterwards. It just might be a little more costly.
And
so I'm looking at that now while you had the groundbreaking.
And just to add to that, I think it's sort of important to note that fast charging isn't always better. I mean, it's really important in some situations. It's necessary in some situations, but as Paul said, it's very high power. It's much more expensive. So if this is in a residential development and people are going to be parking and leaving their car overnight, there's no reason that they need their car to be fully charged in 20 minutes. If you're driving on the turnpike and you need to get somewhere quickly, that's when you need a fast charger. Or, if you don't have a fast charger if you don't have a charger where you live and you have to go charge and then go park your car at home, those are sort of the situations where you need a fast charger. But, there are so many different variables, but you should also sort of consider, oh, maybe a fast charger isn't necessary in this location, and we can go with the much cheaper and simpler option of a level 2 charger.
Walter Andrews asks, are there incentives for homeowners to install level 2 charging stations?
So right now there aren't. The BPU is designing a program right now. And also the utilities have in those filings home charger incentive programs. So they are coming. Also, a lot of the charger manufacturers provide rebates. And that reminded me that I should have said this during my presentation, that rebates actually are not available to businesses or municipalities. They're only available to individuals. So you know, you get an incentive for your car, but not for your charger, but the towns can get an incentive for their charger, but not for their car. So, yeah.
Walter also asked, what is the typical factory warranty given for Chevy Bolts?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head. Ours are through a bid specification. So if he's a government and from a government entity, then if you go to ESCNJ and look up electric vehicles, you'll look and see what their bid document says. But if you're a private person buying a car, I don't know what a dealership gives you on warranty or if you can get extended warranty. I'm not sure about that.
I see Stan has put in the chat, well, he put in the Q&A box, he wrote 8-year warranty on battery and 3 years bumper to bumper.
Okay.
Thanks, Stan. Actually, Stan had a bunch of questions too, which the first one was, what is the cost of ownership calculation on the bolts?
The what?
The cost of ownership on the bolts.
I think the bids were, we purchased them for $34,000 off the bid specifications. But if you're talking about, you know, how much are we paying in maintenance and the electric, is that the question? We haven't.
Yes, Stan says yes.
Oh, okay. So there has been, well, basically zero maintenance costs. The one we went to the dealership and they repaired it and we replaced 2 tires. So that part has been none. We have not really tracked what it's costing to, not that we haven't tracked it, it is tracked, but we haven't looked at what it costs to charge it. Like what is the county paying in electric to charge it? We haven't pulled the data for that.
Stan also asked, what is the annual savings?
The annual savings as far as comparing it to what, a different type of vehicle? With the bolts being so new, we've only had them 2 years. We usually wait for 5 years to do a cost savings analysis. So for instance, quite a few years ago, we bought Priuses and they are hybrids. So we did a cost savings analysis with a Dodge Stratus. So was it cheaper to operate a Dodge Stratus or was it cheaper to operate a Toyota Prius? And actually, if we use the Priuses when they first came out, we actually, as government entities, did get a rebate. And now this is many, many years ago, but we did get a rebate, and it was a $6,000 rebate. So if we got the rebate, it was cheaper to operate a Toyota Prius. But when we didn't take into account the rebate, it was cheaper to operate a Dodge Stratus. And the reason for that is our employees don't necessarily drive a hybrid like a hybrid. So when the light turns green, they step completely down on the fuel pedal and the electric never comes on. So it wasn't, now for these, we'll wait probably 5 years. But again, when you're paying for this size vehicle, we're probably paying, well, this year, I'm not sure. I think we paid 32 or 34,000. And you might be able to buy that same type of vehicle in a gasoline type engine for 20 something thousand, 25 or 26,000. So, you know, taking into account maintenance, it probably is, and this is just, I'm just assuming this, it's less expensive at this point to have a gas operated vehicle, but we still want to move towards electric, even though it may be more costly. It's like paying extra for green energy rather than paying for energy that comes from, you know, fossil fuels.
Stan also asked, are inspectors using those bolts?
We don't have any, we're not a municipality. So if we're talking about like construction officials and electrical inspectors, they're not. But for instance, our mail delivery. So we have mail delivery that goes out twice a day to all our county facilities. For OEM, they use it to go to meetings. For planning, they use it to go to meetings. I think Andras is one of the main drivers of the vehicle to go to meetings, although there hasn't been obviously that many right now. And for youth services, they use it. We have to transport youth to and from detention centers and that type of stuff, or other kinds of places where they have to go. I can't say too much about that, but so they use it for that. But we don't actually have inspectors that go out to job sites to use them, like where they normally use in a municipality old police cars.
Great. Does anyone have any more questions? Feel free to either put it in the chat Q&A or raise your hand. Stan also asked another question. Are employees using those vehicles excited to the point of procuring EV for themselves?
I would say yes. Some of our employees who have in my office have driven it. Their next car, they said they definitely want to get an electric car now, or a plug-in electric car, because they see how easy it is to use and drive. It doesn't drive differently. You know, they all have these preconceptions that it doesn't drive like a car, like it drives like something totally different. You have to learn all these new skills, but it really is just a normal car like anything else.
Yeah, I know that whenever we've done those EV lunch and learns that include the test drives, a lot of people are like, wow, I didn't realize that driving an EV is as easy as it is. So those test drives definitely, I think, help push people in the direction of purchasing EVs for themselves, which I know, Stan, you've kind of, your events have also shown people, you know, the benefits of EVs where they can see the EV in person, and those things are really valuable.
There is no, we don't put a cap on anything.
And I would say a lot of our employees who drive and want them, they just can't quite afford them. Like we have some people that the mailroom, they would love to have one, but they just can't. They're just too expensive right now for some people to own. And we do get the question, why don't we buy Teslas? Because we use tax dollars to purchase that, and the taxpayers might not be too happy if we're buying Teslas. I see somebody put something up in a chat, I believe, too, about the snow.
Yes, Walter just asked, how do you overcome the anxiety of employees driving EVs in the snow?
Well, that anxiety, I don't think, is on the employees. It's on us as the owners of the EVs, where, so we operate in the county probably over 700 vehicles on the road, and sometimes we average 5 accidents a week, not necessarily our fault. But we'd kind of like to have an all-wheel drive vehicle. So we're hoping, and what I understand, that I don't know if this is a fact, and maybe Stan knows this, that Ford is looking to come out with a whole line of electric vehicles within the next year or two, that it's going to include some all-wheel drive vehicles. I mean, that's basically our anxiety as supervisors rather than employees' anxiety of driving it.
You know, full disclosure, I've never driven an EV in the snow before, but I've actually heard that they're better to drive in the snow because the batteries are so heavy.
And it's low to the ground. Like I said, it's a supervisor anxiety. What do you know?
You'll get over it as people get over their range anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And they still do. It's just we don't want them to get damaged because we're afraid. Now, here's the other thing. So with our insurance companies, as soon as we have an accident, everything is total. And the car costs $36,000. By the time you get the money back, you're getting $20,000 back, and now you have to make up that difference in capital to purchase another one. It's, we take that into consideration.
Great. Stan put in the Q&A that they are better to drive in the snow. Thank you, Stan. Stan also had a question about, with the incentives, the federal tax credit, no sales tax, and the $5,000 rebate. He's kind of asking, are EVs as expensive? Is it so expensive to buy one after all of those incentives? Teslas probably still are. But things like the Chevy Bolt and things, I don't know.
Yeah, me either.
I think you have to think it may come to price parity with some other new vehicles, but I heard the statistic and I don't remember it, but I think over half of people don't buy new vehicles. They buy used vehicles.
Oh,
So you know, you have
Yeah,
to
leasing. Yeah,
think
leasing is
that
like
way.
40%. Leasing is like 40% of new vehicles are, I think, are leased.
No problem. You have a-
Yeah, so, you know, even once they reach price parity, then it'll take another few years for there to be more EVs in the used vehicle market. And then maybe then we'll sort of, you know, see them as a more ubiquitous vehicle.
Great. Well, we're almost out of time. So thank you everybody for your questions. If you have more questions, I'm going to share my screen real quick and put up, let's see, put up our speakers' emails again. Just so you can, if you have any more questions, you know, oops, I have to click through. You can email them. You can also email me. My email is Sarah, S-A-R-A, @ridewise.org. And I can, you know, get these emails, reach out to our speakers with any questions you might have. And in my follow-up email, I'll also include contact information for them. So I just want to put out there that there are 2 more webinars coming up soon. As part of our Sustainable Jersey webinar series. The next 2 are about walkability and bikeability. We have part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is on audits on October 29th at 4 p.m. And then part 2 is on travel plans at November 5th at 4 p.m. You can go to our website, ridewise.org. On our homepage, we have a link to the Sustainable Jersey webinars where you can read more about our speakers and register for those. And we will also be having webinars coming up on New Jersey Smart Workplaces and Complete Streets, but dates have not been set for those yet. So I wanted to thank our speakers for taking the time to give these presentations. They're really great and helpful, valuable resources. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, everyone who attended today, and have a good evening.
Thanks.
bye-bye.
How,
Thank
I
you.
guess the big question would be like, how do you decide